In today's video, we're going to talk about some crazy wild swings that we're going to see temperature-wise, but the main focus is not on the wind, not on these crazy low pressures, but what's going to bring from the pressure. The snow, major snow. Let's talk about how much. But yeah, winds for right now, crazy across portions of the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley. 50 to 60 mile per hour gusts hitting them pretty often, but 70 miles per hour in a few spots. Wow, yeah, definitely a little windy. Hold on to those hats. This is going to be a wild pattern because we're going to see these huge dips in the jet stream move on through at times. Look at that big trough as we go on in towards late Sunday and Monday, getting on out, big warm up. Huge ridge across the western portion of the country, allowing for absolutely record-breaking summer warmth. And then as that moves through briefly across the east, we're going to get a nice little brief warm up again before another huge trough will develop into portions of New England, and then another system moving on through. So pretty active here over the course of the next couple weeks. Look at this, a huge change from the big push of warm air to the big push of cold air because of where that low pressure is, cycling it on through. Definitely pretty fascinating there as you take a look across what's going to happen there into the Midwest, Great Lakes, and Northeast. Right there, bang. Hello, cold air, and a lot of moisture running into that cold air that's going to produce severe weather. So winter storm warnings are widespread across portions of Minnesota back into Wisconsin, northern Michigan. That will probably be expanded a little bit more. We're probably going to see more blizzard warnings eventually issued too. So this is the first system. This is Friday evening, moving on through into portions of upstate New York and New England. Strong low pressure systems still bring in the wind. That will eventually move on out as a little bit of lake effect on the back side. And a few snow showers residual into the northeast before the next system gets its act together, and it'll start forming there out across Montana and the Dakotas as we go through Saturday evening, and then really get its act together by the time we get into Sunday morning. Look at that. That is an impressive snowstorm already into Michigan and back to the west. But look as it really ramps up through the day on Sunday. We get into that heavy snowfall across portions of Wisconsin and into northern Michigan, especially the UP, and still decent snowfall back in the Dakotas with blizzard-like conditions. Plenty of moisture associated with this, very heavy snow through the day on your Sunday. But there's warm air on the south side, and that's going to form strong to severe thunderstorms likely into portions of Illinois, into Indiana and Michigan. Meanwhile, still very heavy snowfall, Twin Cities, west, or I should say east, into Green Bay, into Marquette, into Milwaukee, and then some decent snow into eastern Iowa and towards a little bit into Illinois on the wraparound. So yeah, severe thunderstorm. Definitely pretty likely there's southern Michigan, Chicago, Fort Wayne, and south. Severe weather outbreak possible central Indiana down into portions of that Mississippi River Valley eventually. So not just a moderate winter storm or even a major one in spots. You're talking about an extreme winter storm impact this weekend into early next week as we go in towards portions of Wisconsin and even a little bit into borders of Michigan. I mean, that's pretty impressive in areas that do see some of these 2 feet type storms, but it's much more moderate further south, pretty minor once you get down towards Chicago. This is the end of the system as we go on in towards Monday. Strong storms move on through Pittsburgh, and you're going to get wraparound of just some brief snow. You'll get the wraparound through Milwaukee and Chicago, and then finally the system pulls out of northern Michigan and across portions of Wisconsin. And then you'll get a little lake effect likely to set up on the back end. Look at those bands as we go on in towards your Tuesday, even a little bit more of an actual system snow briefly before another little system moves on through. This one's not going to drop anywhere near as much, maybe a 1 to 2 incher. But this just goes to show you as we go throughout next week, it's going to be pretty active. So the initial snow as we see throughout the first portion of this period into Saturday, dropping a few inches in spots across the Canadian-U.S. border. And then hello, that big time snowstorm, not just a big deal. I mean, you're talking about a major significant type event that doesn't always happen every few years, even across portions of the upper Midwest into the northern Great Lakes. Looking at some totals, you're going to have a widespread foot to 18 inches across a pretty big area, but you're going to have a pretty decent corridor, still somewhat widespread, honestly, of 18 to 24 inches. Yeah. Impressive, that's for sure. And then, yeah, we do believe there's a 2 to 3 foot corridor in there across northeastern Wisconsin into the UP of Michigan in spots. Crazy stuff. Very intense. The good news is the system definitely quiets down. Pretty dry weather moves on in that 6 to 10 day period as we go towards next weekend and a little bit beyond. And the huge big time heat cranks across the western portion of the nation after a colder week for at least a few days or so into next week. Across the east, it will back on off just into the far northeast and become much more average at that point. So get ready for March to continue bringing wind, huge temperature swings, severe weather, and some big deal winter storms.